illness affects all families. 1 in 5 Americans deals with mental illness. And so I thought that it's important that families know how to deal when they see a loved one who's dealing with one of the 5 signs. I don't know whether you've spoken about them already, but if you see it, now there's help. Now there's something that can be done.
Welcome to the Jennifer J. Hammond Podcast. Jennifer is a licensed realtor, educator, speaker, and best-selling author. Jennifer's goal is to help you find your yay in every day.
Welcome back to this special radio broadcast, Changing the Culture of Mental Health. It's time. In front of our live studio audience. I'm Jennifer Hammond, and my goal as moderator is to engage all of us in an open, honest, solution-driven discussion about the topic of mental health. Today, this forum is shining a light on a spotlight specifically, on the topic that has too long remained hidden in the shadows. So we have a very special guest in studio with us today. So let me share a little bit about your history. So Dr. Jill Biden, wife of Vice President Joe Biden, is the mother and grandmother, a lifelong educator, and a proud military mom, an active member of her community. As Second Lady, Dr. Biden works to bring attention to the sacrifices made by military families, to highlight the importance of community colleges to America's future, and to raise awareness around areas of particular importance to women, including breast cancer prevention, all while continuing to teach a full-time English professor at the community college in Northern Virginia, which if I'd known, I would have taken one of your classes. As a military mom, Dr. Biden understands firsthand how difficult it can be to have loved ones deployed overseas. Dr. Biden's children's book, Don't Forget, God Bless Our Troops, was released in June 2012. Inspired by real-life events, the book tells a story of a military family's experience with a deployment through the eyes of Dr. Biden's granddaughter, Natalie. During the year her father was deployed to Iraq. The book also includes resources about what readers can do to support military service members and their families. So welcome to the show, Dr. Biden.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate the fact that you're bringing light to this issue, and I think it's a really important issue, so I appreciate you doing this.
Thank you. And that is actually my first question for you, is if you'll share a little bit about why this is so important to you.
Well, our son, Bo, was deployed in 2008. And at that time, of course, we had just been elected. And Michelle and I had decided on working together on the issue of military families. And we were going around the country and talking to military families and what was important to them. And so we came up with 3 pillars for joining forces: education, employment, and wellness. And at the same time, I had spoken to my son when he came home from Iraq, and he said, Mom, I said, Bo, what did you see? What were some of your observations? And he said, Mom, we really need to work on mental health. He said, that's one of the things I did see when I was deployed. And so I brought that issue to the table, and so that became part of the wellness pillar. And so that was one of the things that we started to work on. So I listened to him and what he had to say, and of course I valued his opinion.
Of course.
You listen to your kids,
yes, as all moms should.
Yes.
Really. And I know you've done a lot of work with the campaign to change direction. Why was that important to you?
Well, I think that, it's an important part of joining forces in that I think that mental illness affects all families. 1 in 5 Americans deals with mental illness. And so I thought that it's important that families know how to deal when they see a loved one who's dealing with one of the 5 signs. I don't know whether you've spoken about them already, but if you see it, now there's help. Now there's something that can be done. So that's why it became so important.
And if you would actually repeat those 5 signs, and I want to make sure that people know where to go for the website as well.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Biden, for joining us today. Working with Joining Forces has been a tremendous honor and has helped so much to push out the campaign to change direction, not just to our military and veteran families, but to all families. And for people who want to learn more about it, they can visit changedirection.org. And those 5 signs that Dr. Biden referenced are change in personality, something that we can see in people we care about; withdrawal, someone may stop engaging in activities that they used to find pleasurable; agitation, someone may be more anxious, more angry, not sleeping. Again, things that we can all see. Lack of personal care, someone is drinking too much, not eating too much, sleeping too much, not showering, not taking care of their appearance when that used to be something that they were proud of. And finally, hopelessness. We know that people who are feeling hopeless, they tell us. They tell us in their words, their deeds. And so we want to make sure that everybody, military, civilian, family members, families of the caregivers, families of the fallen, know those signs, because we see them. We just don't often tune into them or then take action.
Right. Absolutely. And Dr. Biden, also, why do you find this to be important to the National Guard?
Well, like our son Bo, I mean, he lived in the middle of the city of Wilmington. So these families aren't on a base.
Yeah.
They're geographically dispersed, and they're in different communities, whether they're rural, urban. And so they're really alone. In that their neighbors might not even know that a mom or a dad could be deployed, or that what children are going through. So that's why it's important for the National Guard, I think, especially, so that they find support, that they know that there's a support system available.
And I think that's one of the basic foundations of helping people with mental health, is really knowing that there are solutions and that there are people interested in helping. So often people feel that there isn't a solution, or that nobody cares.
Yes. Yeah.
And, finding ways that we can actually be sure that they know that somebody cares about them, that can really, we can save lives. Barbara, did you want to?
I think what's so important is we don't have all the answers.
Right.
Just like in physical medicine, in mental health care, we don't have all the answers. But we know that different things fit for different people. And if we make sure that the people we love know we're here for you, I'm not sure what it's going to be, what it's going to take. We don't know, as you heard Yashi spoke earlier about, what works for her is poetry. Someone else, it might be yoga. Someone else, it might be meditation. But saying, don't give up, stick with me. I'm here. I'll work with you. We'll figure it out together. You don't need to be a mental health professional to show compassion. And we need to make it okay that we don't always know the solutions, but that we're in it together to find them.
I agree. And knowing that we're all not perfect. Right. And Dr. Biden, one of the other things I would ask you is, so if the listeners were trying to find a solution of things that they could do, what would be a solution you would say for somebody who you can see is having some issues with mental health?
Well, I think that, there are 7,000 providers in this country. So like Barbara was saying, if they go to the changedirections.org and they read about the signs, and they read about the providers in their community. And I think that we just have to understand that, mental illness is the same as a physical illness. And I don't know whether you covered this before, but I think we have to change the culture. We have to change the thinking about this, around this, and so that people feel comfortable with seeking help, and that there's no stigma, and that you can say to your loved one, there's help for you. And I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there with you to help you find solutions to whatever the problem is that you're dealing with at the moment.
And I think that is so important and well said. Thank you for that, because I think so often people feel like they can't talk about what's happening, and that there's a stigma around, mental health and veterans. And veterans, I hate the idea that, there's this idea that veterans are broken. Veterans are not broken. And Brian, would you like to comment on that?
No, it's absolutely true, and you know, the more that we get involved with the change direction and the 5 signs, so that's what we're finding as well, is that it gives us the opportunity to again get that message out to the communities, get it out to the employers, that they understand that veterans bring so much after their days in the military. They can bring so much to their community, they can bring so much to the employment, and some of the skill sets that they have cannot be matched anywhere else. So, you know, and to Dr. Biden's comment in regard to the National Guard, absolutely true that, you know, the Guard, different than our active duty components, aren't based on a large military installation. And that's another area that we've really worked with our VFWs to make sure that when you have that Guard unit in your hamlet of a community, and that you make sure that the VFW is there, to make sure that the spouses and the families see us as a strategic asset in the community, that the Guard members, the reserve members can come to the VFW and use us. And they have, and it's really wonderful, and it's fulfilling our mission as a veteran service organization, not just to support the veterans, but to support one of our basic principles of supporting those that are currently serving in uniform, whether it's Guard, Reserve, or active duty components.
Yeah.
And Jennifer, could I also add that, you know, our National Guard also helps our country deal with natural disasters such as earthquakes, hurricanes. You know, so what they're seeing constantly is trauma.
Yes.
And it's, you know, in your community where people are hurting, they've lost their homes, they're dealing with illness, they're dealing with the loss of loved ones. And so I think with the National Guard, it's in their deployment they see trauma, or in the communities in this country they see trauma. So it's a lot to deal with. You know, these are citizen soldiers who work at your local grocery store, or they're your doctor, or like with my son, he was a lawyer. And so they're in the community, and then all of a sudden, there they go. They're off to war. And so it's hard for them to then come back and be in their communities, and after what they've just gone through, and the next day returning home and being on the playground with their kids. I mean, you have to, you know, that transition is really difficult. And that's why I think, well, you know, as a National Guard family, I mean, I think the National Guard is so special.
So do we.
Of course. And your book, I love your book. I think that it's so important that we also share that with families, and especially, you know, with children. And so often, again, there's the taboo topic that nobody wants to talk about. You know, if there's a missing arm or a missing limb, that can be something where, you know, a child can say, well, what's happened there? But, you know, being able to have a conversation with a child, you know, about mental health, about war, about things that seem just completely off limits, you know. So I'm going to ask, so why did you write the book?
Well, I had traveled all across this country, actually all across the globe, visiting military families. And what I saw and what I heard from my own granddaughter, Natalie, was how difficult it is when you have a mom or dad who's deployed. And in our case, Natalie really missed her daddy during her birthday. She really, really wanted her daddy there. And so as I got to, you know, we talked about her daddy being deployed all the time. And then I realized there are a lot of kids who may not understand this experience. And I thought it was important for all Americans to understand the experience of what it's like to go through for a child when their mom or dad is deployed, or their grandmom or their grandpa. And so through my conversations with Natalie, I really felt that there was a need for other people to understand. And so that's why I wrote the book.
And I think it's so important that people know those different viewpoints, because, again, we all live in our own little bubble. And so often we don't know what that person or this person or anyone else's viewpoint is. So as we go through these holiday you know, days that sometimes it's not always the best for people, what would you want to leave as the kind of the lasting impression for the holiday season? If someone you know, or even yourself, is struggling with a mental health issue.
Well, I think, Jennifer, you're right. As we come upon the holidays, I think that's an especially difficult time for families. I know for us, looking down the table at Christmas and seeing that empty chair, or just feeling the bow is missing, I know how we tried to carry on as a family. And I think you just really, like Barbara said, you have to look for those signs. Is someone in your family really feeling depressed about the holidays, or is the soldier who's away? It's just, you have to know what to look for. But the big thing is that now there's hope available. Yeah. There's hope. There are answers. It's just like any other illness. So I think if that's the one thing that you can take away, is that there is help now, and that families can have hope, that they can work together and solve whatever it is.
Absolutely. And we're so grateful. Thank you for being here. And I want to say thank you to Barbara Van Dalen for all of your work with the Campaign to Change Direction, and Brian Duffy. And just in closing, I wanted to thank also our live studio audience.
Thank you.
Thank you for engaging by talking about these issues, by looking not only at the problem, but also about realistic solutions. We began to tear down those taboos, and we need to continue this conversation. If we can spend as much time speaking openly and honestly about our mental health as we do our physical health, things will change. We can't begin to solve these challenges until we are fully able to accept them, to speak candidly and courageously about them, and to commit to devoting enough resources to finding healthy alternatives in a supportive and open environment. We have taken a step in the right direction, but this journey has only begun. As First Lady Michelle Obama often says, and I quote, "Whether an illness affects your heart, your leg, or your brain, is still an illness, and there should be no distinction," end of quote. This program would not have been successful without the leadership and passion of Dr. Barbara Van Dalen, founder of Give an Hour. This has been a team effort also here at SiriusXM. I'd like to thank Chris Colbert, Adele Coleman, Greg Hammond, my brother who's been helping out, Rocky Jacobson, Kristen Taylor, and Jack Mac Enos, who's in the box. Thank you so much. This has been a